Seven, six, five, four, three, two, one.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Welcome to the Henry Huzzy Coaching YouTube channel and podcast, where we discuss everything physique and lifestyle related, as well as the science of getting jacked. All right, everyone, welcome back to the second installment of the Henry Huzzy Coaching interviews. This week, we're going to speak with Nicole Dinn. Nicole is the director of coaching and head coach with Barbell 101. She coaches mostly Olympic weightlifting and nutrition, and her team is based out of Fortis Fitness in Toronto. Nicole has many accolades. First and foremost, with her education, she has a Master's of Science in Kinesiology through Memorial University, as well as her Bachelor of Kinesiology through the same university. She's a fascial stretch therapist. She's a level 2 nutrition coach with Precision Nutrition, a level 1 weightlifting coach with the NCCP, a functional movement screen. She has registered kinesiologist with the College of Kinesiologists in Ontario, and she's a CSCS as well, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. So is that good enough shill job for you? You got enough of all that taken out?
Wow.
I know, the list just seems to keep going on.
Did you read my CV?
I just did a little bit of background checking. I like to do a little research.
Nice.
Not only with all that, my first 2 competitions I did with the NLA BBA, Nicole specifically did my nutrition coaching, which was very successful on my behalf, and can't recommend her more. So, Nicole, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm absolutely fantastic. It's a beautiful day here in Newfoundland, which seems to be happening fairly frequently as of late. Which generally doesn't really happen that much in the summer, so I'm enjoying it, although the humidity is high, but I won't complain that much because that's not cool.
Yeah, because it could snow in another month, so
I don't even want to talk about it. You know all about that anyways.
Yeah.
So, I guess we can just start because get to some basic questions. So, what got you into coaching? You've been doing this for quite some time now.
Yeah. So I've been coaching since '99. Ooh, that's almost, so I'm pushing, I'll be coming up to 20 years in another couple of years.
Yeah.
So I got into training and fitness. I was really out of shape as a kid, really out of shape as a teenager, a lot of weight fluctuations, battled an eating disorder for a long time. Mm-hmm. And when I was finishing high school, I met somebody that introduced me to the gym. And so I really loved it. And I went to college for engineering, actually. And so I was in the college gym, and I'm the only woman training in there. And there was a big guy in there, and he was big to me at the time. I have no idea what big is relatively. And so I looked at him one day, and I walked right up to him, and I said, "Hey, buddy, what am I going to do to get big muscles like you?" And he just looks at me like, "Squat heavy and eat lots of meat and potatoes." I was like, okay, that's it. And so, like I say, a monster was born. And then I got into doing my undergrad degree, my master's degree, and I've had other gigs along. But I've always coached in some capacity. Whether it's part-time, now it's full-time, which has kind of been the dream. When I started my undergrad degree, I said, I just want to be a trainer. And now I've been fortunate enough to work with so many great people and build my own team. And, it's really grown and developed like that. So, that's kind of what got me into it, just kind of being sad and out of shape.
That's amazing.
Wanting to get jacked.
It's kind of what got me into training as an athlete as well, because I'm sure when I came back from Asia, I was a little bit overweight for my size, and I was just kind of like, this is it. I've always enjoyed it, but I was like, now it's starting to take things seriously, and that really, really pushed me over the edge, and I totally caught the bug. And
it's addictive.
It is silly addictive, and now I do it 6 days a week for like 90 minutes a day. But, that's part of it. So specifically,
sorry, go ahead.
I said specifically, what got you into weightlifting of all things?
Yeah, so I have wanted to learn Olympic weightlifting for a long time. So there's a guy in St. John's, which I'm sure you know, Nick Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
He is, he's been a weightlifter for a long time. Now he's a power lifter. So years and years ago, when we were both studying at MUN, I tried to get him to teach me a couple of things, and just timing and whatever didn't really work out. I moved to Toronto in 2007. And I sought out a strength coach there who was at the university where I was studying.
Mm-hmm.
And then he ended up moving to McMaster to become their head strength coach. So I kind of lost that. And then probably in 2010, I found another coach, his name is Ron Dykstra, to really teach me. And he doesn't coach weightlifting specifically, but he kind of got me into it. And he took me to my first competition. And I just kind of went from there. I trained with Hani Kanama, so he trained me for a couple of years or so, and I competed with him a little bit. And, weightlifting is such a really cool technical sport,
Mm-hmm.
and I always loved in the gym doing legs and back. So whenever it was a leg day, which was like, 2 or 3 days a week for me at the time when I was, first got into training, legs and back were my thing. And I didn't care if I had to squat every day. Like, for me, it was no problem. I don't like doing arms. I don't like doing chest. I have ribs for a chest. So, legs and back were perfect. And then, combining that with the technical aspect of weightlifting, and, you have to push and challenge yourself. And weightlifting is you're never good enough. You're always trying to be a little bit better. And so I really like that drive of it. Yeah.
Fantastic. It's like exactly the opposite for me.
Yeah.
I really don't like lifting anything like under 6 reps. I'm like, it's the devil. Because I always seem to injure myself. And I think that's, it's kind of like the put your hand on a hot frying pan once and you probably won't ever do it again. But if you do it a couple of times, you're never going to do it. But I guess it's just kind of been inputted in my brain that if I go heavy, I'm probably going to, after a while, end up injuring myself. In fact, just a couple of months ago, I did a just like ridiculous amount of sets of squats per week. I mean, I was doing 2 sessions. I started off with like 5 sets of squats per session, and I just kept ramping it up until I got to 8. So I was doing 16 sets of like 6 rep squats, and I actually burned out. I had to deload after 3 weeks. I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, it's done. I may have ramped up a little bit too quickly. I don't know. Probably sounds like it, but I learned from that experience for sure.
Some of my athletes will be like, oh, coach, this program is brutal. But even I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I know. Well, the way I look at it too is like I lost a good bit of time of like actual training, because every deload you take, you're not like getting adaptations to come through over time. So I just lost a week there. But I guess I learned the hard way that the intensity is a big matter of fact when it comes to that too.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
Yeah.
And when we talk about training for weightlifting, intensity and volume. Intensity and volume are the 2 biggest things that we vary. And if they stay the same all the time, then you get athletes who will peak and plateau and, eventually start to degrade in terms of their performance. Mm-hmm. So we have to vary those sorts of things to allow good recovery, because weightlifting is such an intense sport. It's, it's not just about, using your muscles. It's your training technique and speed and power and strength, all the time. Of course, there's going to be different focuses depending on the training cycle. But, so you have to really make sure that you monitor and take care of what your athletes are doing, from a volume and intensity perspective.
100%.
Yeah.
Agree, yeah.
I'm just going to turn your volume up a bit.
No problem. Yeah, I had to turn it down a little bit because I was getting echo once again.
Okay.
But it seems to have been remedied. You can still hear me?
Yep.
Fantastic. Now, how long have you been operating under a barbell?
So I started coaching people weightlifting back in probably July of 2014. And it just kind of started very organically. I was training out of Fortis at the time, and I was actually working full-time as a neurophysiologist. And somebody came up to me and said, I hear you know weightlifting, you think you could teach me? And so I said, sure. So his name is Sebastian. He's actually my assistant coach now. And so we I started teaching him lifting, and then a couple other people saw that I was coaching, and so they, so they kind of climbed on board. And then I had then all of a sudden I kind of had a team. And so then at the end of 2014, I quit my job as a neurophysiologist and just started focusing on coaching. And so I've been doing that ever since. So I guess it'll be 3 years come December.
Oh, awesome.
2.5 years. And it's great, it's really fulfilling. It's not really work. I take people to competitions. I get to, watch. There's, like I said, there's a big technical aspect to weightlifting, and for me that speaks really highly. I like to analyze and look at movement and correct and this sort of thing. So I get to bust out all my biomechanics, and that kind of gets me going.
Well, yeah, you do what you love, and you never work a day in your life.
Exactly.
I get. That's actually what drove me into this sort of situation. Is like I absolutely love this, and I was helping people essentially for free. And actually, one of the people I was helping was like, "Why don't you just even charge people for this?" And I was like, "I don't know, because I just enjoy it." And
That's right.
I was designing programs and reading and researching and all this other stuff, and I was just like, you know what, maybe I can. So that started me too. Never looked back.
But the saying, when you're good at something, never do it for free.
Very true, which I don't anymore, thank God.
Yeah.
Because I'd be very busy right now.
Yeah, good.
Now, this is what I'm very excited to get into, some of the periodization models that we were discussing earlier, and what kind of the stuff that you use with your athletes for weightlifting.
Yeah, so, pretty much it's more of like a linear, I guess it's combinations of nonlinear, but it's, straight up, it's more linear periodization. You're varying, your training block generally has like one main focus for an energy system, and I'll also have a focus for technical work. So I guess it is kind of nonlinear, but it's not nonlinear in the energy system sense where you're training like strength power and power hypertrophy or things like that.
Yeah.
So generally how I structure things is I've got an annual plan that I work off of, and the annual plan is based out of what the competition season looks like for the year. And with the end of the annual plan being the most important competition or the biggest goal. And if they don't have a big goal, then I'll just develop a plan for a full year and just cycle things through that. But if they do have a big goal, then the most important competition's at the end, and all the other competitions are scheduled within that annual plan. And then the training is based around that, because for competition sports, if you don't have a goal in mind, then you're just kind of training for nothing, really. Like you're not, you don't really get a chance to, what's the point? Right? So why don't I show you what it is that I work off of? Share screen. See, Henry's getting really excited.
10 seconds to get it up this time. It's amazing.
There we go. Can everybody see that? You see that?
Fantastic.
All right. So I develop a year-long plan. Let me see if I can make this window a little bit wider here.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. And I'll scroll through it. So like I said, I develop a year-long plan for people. And so this is one of my athletes. His name is Jonathan. I'm trying to get him to provincials. So, if you look over here on the very far right, you'll see all the stuff that's highlighted in green right now is competitions coming up.
Okay.
And he's got, let's make this a little bigger.
Now, just a quick second. You might not be able to make that wider. I think it's dropping one of the video streams. So actually, no, it's working fine now.
You're okay?
Yeah, I'll let you know if it drops it again, but we should be doing just fine.
Let me see if I just want to zoom in a little bit so that everybody can, let's see if that makes it any better. Probably not. Okay, view. Here we go. Zoom in.
Perfect.
Okay, good. Just so we can see what's happening here. So all the competitions are in green, and then what I've got done in yellow is weeks off, because periodically throughout the year they do need to take a week off. They don't want to, but I force them to. And I think every competitive sport, you do get some time off, like for active recovery and this sort of thing. So I start here and I work backwards. So I've also put in the holidays so that I kind of know when I expect people to not really train so much or have lower training weeks. And then I work backwards for the full year. So we started this year, the season for provincials for weightlifting. Provincials are usually around the end of March. And so, we started this year at the beginning of April. Mm-hmm. And so what I look at and program for, got it. So what I look at here is, I try to vary the volume, which is like the number of reps, the total volume, mm-hmm. and the intensity in terms of, the absolute. So, per workout, what is the absolute intensity? And we speak in kilos in weightlifting. So this may not look like a lot, but this is actually kilos. And then the percentage of intensity. And so if you're looking down here on this little graph that's going on, the blue line is the intensity, and then the black bars are all volume. And it goes by every week. So I've got him mapped out now until the end of July. I don't usually map out programs much further than 4 weeks ahead, mainly because I want to see how my athlete responds, especially for new athletes when you haven't worked with them for a long time. It takes a little while to get to know them and figure out what they can adapt to and this sort of thing. And I also don't like to put things so set in stone. So if I have a program set out and I say, okay, you're going to do this for the next 12 weeks, and they get through week 3 and they're crashing, they're not sleeping well, or they're demonstrating signs of overtraining or whatnot, I've got to go back and, revisit everything then. Whereas if I do it in smaller blocks, I have found for me that, it just works a little bit better. Now, with that said, I know generally what I'm going to be up to in terms of the type of exercises, in terms of the purpose of the programming as we go along for the training season. But it's just the details are not always mapped out much more than 4 to 6 weeks ahead. And so we just finished a general prep cycle. So general prep, I'm just really trying to get my athletes used to a higher work volume. I want to just build up some basic capabilities with them. I want them to develop, a little bit more strength, get used to being back in the gym and training, because weightlifting is very, it's intense, but it's a full body workout every single day you come to train. And it's not, it's not for the faint of heart, to be quite honest with you. If you get frustrated easily, if you think that seeing progress immediately is what drives you, then it is not the sport for you, because the progress in weightlifting can be very slow at times. It can seem like it's going downhill. And I think every weightlifter goes through this, where they, they're like, oh, I'm sucking. And then all of a sudden, a miracle happens and they make a PR or something like that. And then everything is great again. So this is how weightlifting rolls. But, and strength sports and, all of this sort of stuff. So yeah, in terms of the periodization, so if you're looking here, the intensity, or in here, actually it's easier. So the intensity varies. And it might look, so, he's got this week off here, this week 12, sorry, if I go through here, if he's had a competition or there's a deload week, sometimes the intensity looks a little lower just because the volume, the way that I've got it calculated, the volume isn't quite as high, but it still could be a heavy training week. And what I might do is, I will probably, a lot of the times what I'll do is, instead of in a single week having them try to hit a PR in their snatch and their clean and jerk and a squat, I'll vary it throughout the training cycle. So 1 week they might go ahead, okay, this is going to be a heavy snatch week. The next week is going to be a heavy clean and jerk week. Next, or we're on a squat cycle. So the beginning of the year, right away, we did a Russian squat cycle, or modified one anyway. And so that was really fun for the guys and me. And so now what we're working into is more of a special prep stuff. So I've tried to take all of the strength that I've worked with Jonathan, and now I want to turn it more into speed and power. So we're doing a little bit more plyometric work. We're doing the technical work now. We'll be a little bit more focused on speed. The weights are getting a little heavier, but now the volume is going to start. You'll see more of this kind of curve drop off with volume. It'll kind of get a little bit lower as we go through. And then when we start getting into this more pre-competitive and competitive season, you expect to see, and it's not mapped out here, but you expect to see that the intensities are going to rise a little bit more and the volume is going to stay low. Because now I want to make sure that they stay strong, and intensity is going to be the biggest determining factor in terms of them staying strong. And I also want them to recover. So if I give them a shit ton of volume, if I give them a load of volume and try to make them lift as heavy as possible, they're going to burn out, especially if it's a new athlete. And this athlete has only been lifting, I think he's only been lifting maybe a couple of years at the most, which is actually pretty new in the weightlifting world. Like it takes a good 5 to 7 years to really become a well-honed, well-trained athlete in weightlifting. Now you'll see people who get into the sport and they're amazing at it right away, and good for them. But in terms of developing your full potential as a good athlete, it takes a few years. So that's how I generally structure my training here. And if you want to see an example, there. So all programs, the exercises are here. It's pretty straightforward. What their top lifts are over here, and then the number of sets, reps, it calculates automatically what they should be lifting, again, in kilos, and the number of reps and this sort of thing. And then any accessory work that we might do goes down there. And that's pretty much it. It's, for me anyway, it's kind of like piece of cake, and I've been doing it for a long time. But I think for anybody that's not used to it, when you start talking about macrocycles and mesocycles and microcycles and all this kind of stuff, it can get pretty tangly for people. So
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know this year, as soon as I finished my competition last year, I spent almost all of December planning out my macro cycle for the entire year up until next year's competition. Now, I've edited and changed part of these plans over time due to, results and how I've, some things I didn't really respond to. As we were talking earlier that time that I was like, I'm going to do this program for 5 weeks, and I cut it off at 3, then I had to edit everything. But yeah, it's really, really, really good, to get such a forward thinking to, the training year, because planning is 100, or not 100%, but very, very good for success. A good plan and strategy put in place will put you in a very advantageous position. And I learned that, I think, really my first 2 years, because when I started my diet for show, I was much, much heavier than I should have been. You're at the end of it or halfway through, I was playing the catch-up game for the first 2 years, while I was like, I need to get this lean, for me at least. And much better advantageous position this year for sure, a lot longer out as well. Slow and steady wins the race when it comes to, physique and weightlifting and all that kind of sports as well. You don't want to ever be playing catch-up. I don't think you can with weightlifting whatsoever. So
no, you can't. No. You have to build. I'm going to turn the screen off, okay? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. And, you made a really good point about, you mapped out that program for 5 weeks, and then you had to stop after 3. And so, and that's really good in terms of, you listen to your body and you understood what's happening. And, one of the things that I have to do as a coach is I really pay attention a lot to what my athletes are feeling like. And when you watch your athletes lift and you know what they look like, I can tell right away if somebody's having a slow day, if they haven't slept, if they haven't eaten, are they working too much? Because I can tell by the speed of their lift. If they're slow, I'm like, all right, you need to, you can't lift quality if you're fatigued, right? So I really like to make sure that they stay on board with their recovery. And I'll use several things to monitor that. So I'll use things like mood, sleep quality, appetite, energy levels, your overall level of stress perception. And those are really soft things to monitor. But if you start seeing trends over time where somebody's not sleeping, and that for me is the biggest one. When someone comes and tells me I am not sleeping, then I look at their training volume right away, and the other things that are happening in their life, because there's only so much allostatic load, we call it. So there's only so much stuff that a person can handle in their life, whether that's work or relationship stress or other personal stress, training stress. Everything goes into that pot of stress. And that's a finite capacity. And so if you start blocking that with life stress and other stress and work, then there's only a little amount left for training stress. And so you have to be able to modify the amount of training that you give somebody in order to ensure that they still optimally recover.
Mm-hmm. And so I know firsthand how important sleep is. It's been an ongoing issue of mine. In fact, you'll be happy to know that for 6 months I've almost slept perfectly now due to numerous strategies that I've put into place. I'm getting up at 7 o'clock every day, bed by 11. I've been getting a pretty solid 8 hours of sleep a night.
Good for you.
Yeah, it's and it has a lot to do with stress management and things like that as well. And exactly what you were just portraying. And I'll tell you, it's funny that you were saying earlier that I knew I needed to take that week after that deload. Well, my first 2 weeks, my first week, I got in, I did my squats, I felt great. Second weekend, my numbers jumped super high. That technical aspect, just getting back up there. Then week 3, it was just like, whoom. So when my strength just plummets like that by the end of the second week in the second session, I'm like, yeah, I'm not recovering even close. So, I'm overreaching in 2.5 weeks. I can't produce an overload anymore for that week, and it's kind of pointless to continue. In fact, I would think it would almost be counterproductive if I kept going and just smashed myself for another 2 weeks. I might even digress even further, and that's injury central. That amount of inflammation and stress going through, and then all I need to do is blow out a knee or hurt my back, and lifting that heavy stuff, it freaks me out.
and injuries really do happen. Either you're not warm, and that's very common, but they also happen a lot when you're tired, when you're fatigued, you're overtrained, because you're not the movement patterns, maybe they're not as good as what they normally are, or you have that stress on the body, and something gives. That's that kind of what's happened, especially if you've already got something brewing. Your back. So if your back is already out of alignment and, you throw extra stress on top of that, then, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast recently that Lane Norton was in. He was talking about his injury when he blew himself out. He was on the road for a little while doing seminars, and he was in a different gym. He just was tired and snap, injury. He was out for 8 months to a year. So it's just, a combination of different things, and then nobody wants to be out of the game for that period of time. That's for sure.
No, and injuries really do take a long time to recover. So I used to be a competitive jiu-jitsu athlete and had sustained umpteen injuries in that sport. Both shoulders are blown, my left knee, ribs I've broken, just a ton of things. And, you've got to know when to call it a day, And now I live by the motto of live to fight another day, because I want to be able to come back and train. So I might not train, I would rather train every day at a decent level, and some days heavy, some days light, versus, hard for a few weeks, and then I can't do anything for a month because I'm injured again, or, something else is going on. So for me, I'm not competing in anything anymore. I just train now because it makes me feel good, and, I like being strong, and I like to look good. So, live to fight another day. And if that's your goal, you're just training for health and fitness. You don't need to go ahead and kill yourself to the point where you're off for X number of weeks. For the average person, it's just not necessary.
I agree completely. And, it's so important as well when it comes to, not just strength training as hypertrophic training as well, because after that first 2-3 years, when you're no longer considered a beginner and you're not making those newbie gains or beginner gains, as it's called, you're just inching out progression over years and years. And the advanced trainee only gains a couple of pounds, maybe a year if it's a fantastic year. So going in and just smashing yourself constantly and, risking that injury, guaranteed the injury is 6 months to 8 months, will take away 2 to 3 years of even possible progress, because if you can't train it, you're basically going to regress. So it's very, very important to not hurt yourself 150%.
Yeah, so the take-home message then with all of this is, vary your training intensity, vary your training volume, so how many sets and reps that you're doing, and make sure that you're recovering enough. So make sure that you're getting good sleep quality. Make sure that you're taking off days when you need to, you're taking those deload phases, and make sure that you're eating well, because that's the big thing that a lot of people forget. They say, I get people that'll come to me, my athletes will go, coach, my program's not working. I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. Are you sleeping at night? No. What's your diet like? It's crap. Well, there you go. So you have to get everything online first before you can say that a program doesn't really work. And I can't do that for somebody. I can't put, I'm not your mother. Sometimes I feel like it, but I'm not going to put you to bed. I'm not making your lunch every day. Right. So these are things that you have to do on your own.
Yeah. Everybody's a grown adult. You need to do this yourself, sort of thing.
In fact, put on your big boy pants.
I remember when, I think it was years and years ago when I first started training, I read a really good article on T Nation that said, you think training is everything, but it's only a small percentage. It's kind of like a triangle. You take it that recovery, nutrition, and training, exercise are kind of like this. And if one gets out of whack, it kind of askews the triangle, and it doesn't really operate to the best of its ability. And it's kind of a trifecta that you need all three things in unison to really make those optimal gains in strength and hypertrophy as well.
Absolutely. And so, that's the other thing that I try to do with my athletes is give them some pointers and give them help in the nutrition department. And really most people that I work with in terms of the nutrition coaching side of things, they just want to train, they're training to be healthy and fit and feel good. And so I give them nutrition guidelines and advice to help with that. There's very few people right now I don't even have anybody that I'm working with that I give them a set macronutrient calorie requirement, and we vary, we do nutrient timing or things like that, because for the average person who just wants to, be healthy, they just want to lose a few pounds. This sort of thing is not a sustainable method, and it's just not necessary. So I tend to go a little bit more with a holistic approach, or a habit-driven approach. And, and coming from a PN coaching background, that's, their method. And I don't just coach that way because, I'm trying to promote them or things like that. It's something that's worked for me personally. I've seen a lot of my other clients have it work for them personally. And it's something that I believe in, and I know that it's a good method. So that's how I roll with that.
Yeah, I can attest to that's a really good method, because I remember when I first started with you, the whole, palm size of protein, fist size of carbohydrates. You were at that plate, like fill the rest of the plate with vegetables sort of thing, and a thumb full of nuts. That still sticks to me to the day. If I'm in a rush to go somewhere and I haven't prepped meals for the day, which doesn't happen very frequently, but if I do, that's kind of the same guideline I still use. Like if I got to go and that needs to happen, like that's what I stick. I know it's a good balanced meal and I can just peace out and go.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really good.
And now, who has time to, take a food scale out for, you're gone out to a restaurant.
Yeah, all of it, true.
If I'm out with friends, I'm not going to bust out my food scale to be like, well, there's X number of grams of this. No, I'm not going to do that. But I am going to take the knowledge that I have in terms of I know what's good. I know what doesn't agree with me. I know my body. And so I'll eat according to the goals that I have.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And so we're talking about, so you mentioned the hand technique. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about what that looks like for people. And I've got another infographic to show you guys. So I'll share the screen again. Here we go. There we go. So can everybody see that?
Oh,
you see that?
Yeah, I got it.
All right. So so as Henry mentioned, using this hand system, which is probably, maybe some people have heard of it. It is starting to become very popular. I think, I'm not sure if PN folks were the ones who kind of invented it, but I know that they have definitely promoted it very much in the forefront of, health and nutrition lately. And so, using your hand is a really great guide in terms of figuring out how to structure a meal. And, there's a bit of a difference for men and women. And so that just means 1 versus 2. And, so if I use my hand and I want to figure out how much protein I should be getting, then, it's a palm size version, which is here for women. So I would have 1, men have 2. And then it tells you then, roughly you're getting between 20 and 30, give or take. It may not, it's, again, not an exact science, but counting calories is never an exact science. And then vegetables, you definitely want to have vegetables at every meal, or as many meals as you can possibly get. If, post-workout for sure, some carbs, are really good for you. So, decent carbs and only about the size of your hand, so cupped hand here. And then for fats, something the size of your thumb. And so the question I get with this is they say, well, how, if everybody gets the same recommendation, then how is it different across people? It's like, well, everybody's a different size.
Totally.
So my hand, I'm 5'8" and 165 pounds. So my hands are a lot bigger than, a woman who's 5'1" and 100 pounds. So, it kind of sorts itself out in that sense.
Yeah, totally. And when I first started using it, I noticed, really good results, and just adherence was super easy, and it was really not complicated to start. And that really worked for me. Like prepping meals was super easy. Like you said, there was no shenanigans when it comes to weighing and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as starting out, it was fantastic. I must say, I really, really enjoyed it as well.
And that's a really big, as you mentioned, it's easy to stick to, and adherence is good. And that's, the consistency part is really key. And if you start giving people things that are too difficult to manage, they're not going to be able to stick with it. 100%. So, something like this is a little easier for people to manage versus, having to get a certain number of grams of things for every single meal. You can give somebody this, and it's, it's a easy to follow guideline.
And I think when it comes down to it as well, like consistency is king when it comes to diet. Like if you're given something, you have guidelines. As long as you stick to it and adhere it, that's the best part. But when people start veering away from their diet because, one, it's too hard to follow, or they're just basically taking too much time and they don't have the time to do it, then that wavering away from adherence is essentially a big, big, big issue. So
yeah. And and the other thing too is like humans are inherently resistant to change. And so when you start changing more than one thing at once, then people, you might be able to do it for a week or 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is, but people often fall off the bandwagon and then they blame themselves and they go, oh, there's something wrong with me. I'm a failure. I suck. I'm weak. I'm blah, blah, blah. And that's not really true. It's just the fact of psychology that, when we're trying to change things in our lives, changing one thing at a time will give you a much higher success rate than trying to change everything at once. So when somebody comes at me and they go, well, I'm going to start eating protein every meal and vegetables and, fat. I can do this, no problem. And I say, okay, well, what are you doing now? Oh, I have chips for dinner. It's like, okay, well, this, and so I take it in and I listen.
Yeah, it might be a little bit big to take on at once.
Exactly, and it is. And so what I do when I work with people, especially the people who are really new to eating well, I'll give them one habit at a time. So just one thing to work on at once. And I assess their confidence level in how they've and in their ability to do it. So I'll say, okay, if we're working on a protein habit, okay, so eat 1 pound of protein, every meal. Now, how confident are you that you can do this? And if they give me anything less than a 9 out of 10, I have to modify it because they're going to fail. And I don't want them to fail. I want them to be successful. In fact, I'm going to make something so simple and to the point of it seems stupid for them to be successful, because success is going to breed success.
100%. Yeah, the psychology of doing something and getting and actually doing it and completing it and then coming back, especially when you, like someone says, how did you do this week with your protein goals? And they're like, man, I absolutely smashed it. It was absolutely amazing. And then they're kind of like, they have that positive aspect when it comes to goals and the goal setting. So the next week when you put something else or give them a new challenge, that protein's already in place and you're moving on to something different. It just puts a very, very positive light onto changing things instead of smashing yourself.
Yeah, and we can talk also about like framing languages and stuff like that, but that might be a conversation for another day. But yeah, you do want to create that positive reinforcement, that positive environment where you've shown them that they're capable of doing something. Because a lot of the times people think, I can't do this. But when you give them something and you help them realize that they can do it, that's very empowering for folks.
100%. And you know what? That's a very big part for me of why I enjoy this so much. Is because I really enjoy the mental aspect of helping people with me. I had a girl recently that has horrible, horrible anxiety. And she was having trouble with just a lot of even the easier tasks, but it was herself getting in her own head sort of thing, right? Yeah. And I went through a position of saying, take things on like 1 hour at a time. And if you have to worry about that, take it on like, 1 day at a time. But I was like, don't worry about the weekend that you need to finish just today. And
Yeah.
she actually went quite successful with that, and she lost quite a bit of weight, and she was very, very happy with the results in the ending. And
Nice.
it's very, very rewarding on my behalf as well, because that was something that I've never dealt with personally, but I was able to help somebody with. So it's a good bit of fun.
Yeah, and what I like to tell people when I work with them is, think about being in the moment. Like, you're right. People worry about what's coming up. I've got a wedding. I've got the weekend. I'm going to get off track. What if I can't do this? And they go through the whole what ifs thing, or they go, oh, well, the last time I was here and this happened and blah, blah, blah. It's like, forget all of that. Worry about what's happening right now. And what can you do right now to get yourself towards your goals in this moment?
100%. And yeah, it's debilitating, a lot of that fear sometimes. At least to this person, it was very debilitating. And as you were mentioning, that stress adds up to that like finite amount of stress as well. That it adds to the negative aspects and all that other stuff. So no bueno.
Yeah, no good.
No bueno at all. So we've gone through most of all the questions I have for you, and the last one is just more of a opinion. And it's kind of interesting because as of recent, I found like it's becoming more and more prevalent that you're seeing weightlifters and people squatting using fake weights. And
fake weights?
It's a big thing. No, 100% the plates. There was a Brazilian woman that was on Instagram. It was debunked like hours after she posted it. She was squatting like 485 pounds or 585 or something. It was just insane. And she was doing it for reps as well. And like a lot of other guys just doing silly things in the gym that, stuff like that. So I thought, how do you think this, social media has added a whole lot of pressure when it comes to athletes, not only physique based, but, weightlifting as well. And how do you feel about this? Like, because I feel kind of strongly about it for a lot of things, like even people that are getting like surgery and things like that, and then claiming it was like, weight in the gym and
I feel like at one point I felt really strongly about it, and it would really bother me because it, for those of us that are, the average person, and I put myself right into that category, or at least the average fitness person, when you're constantly seeing somebody progress and do well, it's kind of like, should I be pushing harder? Am I good enough? And this sort of thing. But you have to remember too, what you see on social media is only the best of the best. You never see the fails, or sometimes you'll see the fails, but you never see the worst. You never see the average. You never see, the guy with the six pack, he's floating around with those photos, but you don't see when he used to be fat. Like the girl with the nice butt, you don't see what else she does to do that. So, you have to really, and media in general, you have to really take it all with a grain of salt in certain senses. So, but it's unfortunate because there is a huge amount of pressure, for people who are in the fitness industry, especially, to have a certain look and to, perform a certain way and things like that. And if, it's unfortunate that if you see people who, aren't that level, then, sometimes they get questioned in terms of their credibility and their knowledge and their ability to produce results. And, as the saying goes, not all great athletes are great teachers, and not all great teachers are great athletes. So, but yeah, when you see things on social media, especially if, for me being a woman and then seeing how social media impacts other young women and what their influence is on them, I take offense to that as a feminist and as a woman, and as a coach and things like that. So it's unfortunate, but, if you can manage to push all of that aside and focus on what you do, then, it helps your life become a little better. And, start unfollowing stuff that you find to be stressful. Follow cats instead or something like that.
Cats and sloths and puppies and other sorts of things that bring positivity.
Go follow all the cute animals. Makes your life it'll make your Instagram feed much better.
You 100%. Yeah, I could tell actually when it came to the peak of my off season, I was just shy of 200 pounds. And, it's really interesting because as a person, I would post progress pics, once every week or two. Yeah. And I would notice as I got bigger and bigger and bigger, the likes actually dropped lower and lower and lower, which is really interesting. But now that I did a mini cut, it took 8 weeks. I lost like 14 pounds and got a lot better shape, and the likes went up again. So, if this was somebody that, like, I don't care about it. Like, I just do it because I want people to see what I'm doing every couple of weeks. I don't do like a throwback Thursday to that time I was on stage, or like 4 weeks out when I was like shredded and looked amazing. I want people to see the real results that I'm going through over time. And
Yeah.
I feel like when people do a lot of these pictures and they're posting something up and they're like showing this image, it's almost like you're kind of lying to somebody, because if you're posting a picture of something and that's not you now, that was you like 2 years ago at your peak that one time, but now you're like 30 pounds overweight, you know, like I see that and it kind of like irks me, because you're actually sending, like you said, the wrong message to people. And I feel like, you know, there should be much more honesty in it all, especially for social media, because, you know, you are giving people like young women and young men all this like almost like impossible dreams to be something like this all the time, when in fact it isn't. And actually, it takes me back to a thing I seen, an article on precision nutrition that posted like, you know, if you want to get to like 15% body weight or body fat, you need to do this. If you want to get to like this level, you need to do this. And like to get to that like really lean like all the time, you have to take some pretty extreme measures, and it cannot be sustained for long periods of time. So
and so I know exactly which article you're talking about, and that's not actually, you know, a linear amount of effort for results. It's an exponential amount of effort for a little tiny bit more results. So you have to ask yourself what's important to you.
100%.
You know, and what can you handle and what can you do? Like I go through phases where, you know, I can do all my macros and I map everything out, and you know, but for me it's only sustainable for about a month. Like that's it, right? And I've learned that about myself. I'll try to do it, and then you know, I fall off. So I just go back to using more of the hand principle stuff. And before, when I would do that sort of thing, I would go, oh, I'm a failure. But I mean, obviously now I understand that, no, I'm not. I'm just a human being, and that's how life rolls. And, you know, I know what works for me.
Yeah. I'm the same way when it comes to tracking. I track very, very, very loosely in the off season. I'll track like my carbohydrate intake. I'll also track mostly like my protein intake. I'll make sure I'm getting like, you know, 82% per pound. So I'm only taking like 160. But yeah, besides all that, like it's very loose. Like if I want to have a certain breakfast with my girlfriend, it's not going to be a big issue. Basically, when it comes down to me, like as long as my protein and carbohydrates are good, calories are king. If I'm going to gain an extra half pound this week, it's not really going to bother me. It's not an issue. So,
and you know, there's definitely validation in tracking what you eat at certain times, especially if you're going, I don't really know why I'm gaining or losing weight, or I feel like my goals aren't being met. Then you definitely have to take a look at what it is that you're eating. And, you know, some people, they like to do it for a longer time to help keep them on track, and that's totally okay too. But, you know, you just want to make sure that you don't get obsessed with stuff, which is you know, sometimes there's a fine line depending on who you are.
100%. And I know for myself, when I prep for shows, I do become that level of obsessed around that stuff. But I feel like I almost have to at that point, because, you know, it's not just general public. This is like, I need to do this. And it needs to be that level of precision, because in order for me to leave with a trophy or an overall or whatever, if I don't do it, and I got, say, this year I got second place instead of first, I'd always wonder, you know, what if I didn't take it to that extra level? But that's a very big difference between a physique athlete and, you know, general population, and someone that's, you know, not trying to lose weight and get to those very, very finite levels of body fat.
And if you are taking it to the next level, then you have to put those extreme measures in, whether you're a physique athlete or any other kind of athlete in the sport. Those things have to be tied in 100%. You know, whereas for the rest of us that are, you know, just trying to live to fight another day, those extreme measures aren't necessary.
100%. And I actually want to just edit that coin term, because I thought at first you said lift to fight another day. And I think I'm going to coin that and use it all the time now.
You're welcome.
No problem. So, you know what? That's pretty much all the questions. We aim for 25 to 30 minutes. We're up to almost 50. So we got a couple more conversations in than we intended.
Yeah.
Nicole, is there anything else you'd like to say, or just give a little shout out or anything like that to anybody?
Yeah, you know, if people are in the Toronto area and they're interested in learning about weightlifting, you can certainly get in touch with me. The website is barbell101.com. You can find us on Instagram at barbell101, or you can email me, Nicole, at barbell101.com. Happy to answer any questions or give people a hand.
Fantastic. And even if you just drop over, I know Nicole has some fantastic articles that when I was doing research for this podcast, I read through almost all of them. a lot of really good information and a lot of like opinion-based stuff that is really good. So I implore everyone just to pop on over to that website and give it a check because there's some really good info on it.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Maybe we'll get you on again sometime to talk about the psychology stuff that you mentioned earlier. That'd be kind of interesting.
That'd be fun.
All right. Well, thank you once again, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me, Henry.
Cheers.
Cheers.